Hi, BookTube. Welcome to Jackie's Literary Corner. I am Jackie, and happy Halloween! It is All Hallows Eve. Although the video I'm obviously filming is not a spooky read, so it has nothing to do with spookiness. But I wanted to get my videos that are spooky related out first, get those filmed, and then do this. And besides, you guys might not watch this until tomorrow. But, as you can see, I read my second Twisted Tale, and this is, going by the title, this is the Cinderella story, and I am glad to say that I enjoyed this one a little bit more so than the Frozen one. So, in this one, the tagline and question that's posed is, what if Cinderella never tried on the glass slipper? So, we pick up right at the ball, where, and one of the things I really like about this one is that in the original animated movie, now the adaptations have fixed this, but in the original animated movie, we don't really get to see Cinderella and the prince really talking. We get the impression that they were, but mostly we just see them dancing, and we have the title song, the love song, So This Is Love, which I think is sung by the voices of Cinderella and the Prince. I'm assuming, and so we don't really get to see them. We just see them dancing and gazing in each other's eyes, and it's love at first sight, clearly. And which I personally don't believe in, but with this one, we actually get to see them talking. We get the conversation, and we see him asking her about herself and what she wants out of life, and which is a little deep for this few minutes, but at least we get that scene. I really appreciate that, because it helps to develop their romance a little bit more. It kind of explains it a little bit more. But one of my negatives, that has always been a negative for the Cinderella story, and why it's never been my favorite, is the romance feels very insta-love. We don't really see, in the anime movie, we don't really get to see that romance develop. We see them fall in love with each other at the ball, but that's it. They only had a few hours together. Even at least in Little Mermaid, Ariel and the Prince Eric, they had a few days together, and yeah, she couldn't talk. But, they still got to know each other a little bit. Like, he still kind of got her personality and who she was. While this one, like, originally in the anime movie, which, granted, it's based on a fairy tale. A lot of fairy tales, the romances are kind of like that. Very insta-lovey. But with this one, we have this one scene, but we don't, I feel like one of my biggest gripes is that we didn't have enough of them. Of them developing, which the plot itself, the way it was written, is it didn't make sense for them to really interact before you realize that she is the mystery princess, which I don't think that's a spoiler, because, most people who read this probably have seen the movie, the original movie, or at least an adaptation of it. So they had the whole part after the ball when she goes home, and, what another thing that I like about this book is that we're actually, because it's a novel, it allows us to be inside of Cinderella's head. We get to see what she's thinking and feeling, and then we also get to see how her abuse from her stepfamily, her emotional abuse from them, emotional mental abuse, affects her, and how she feels about herself and how she thinks. Like, there's constant self-doubt throughout the story, and her questioning things, and I have this whole theory about why it was insta-love for her and the prince, and I think it kind of also applies to Jane Eyre as well, that she fell in love with the prince because he was kind to her. He showed her love and kindness and respect, so it was like immediately she clung to him. And he was the only guy that she had ever interacted with. Like, she didn't interact with any female, she didn't even have any female friends. The only people she interacted with were her stepfamily, who treated her like shit. And her pets, all the animals, like the mice, and her dog Bruno, and even Lucifer. and the birds and stuff. And then her only moment of peace was in her dreams. I mean, there's a whole song about that where she talks about her dreams and stuff in the opening scene of the original movie. And so she's daydreaming about her time at the ball, and she's fallen so hard for this guy, and the ball was so beautiful, and she got to see the palace. It was so amazing, and of course so we're inside her head the whole time, and she doesn't even realize that the stepmother is paying very close attention to her and her actions. And so we get to that part where she locks her in the attic. And we have the whole part when the Grand Duke comes, but instead of the mice helping her escape, the whole, like in the live action where her window of her tower room is open and they hear her singing, we don't have that part either, so the Grand Duke doesn't know she's up there, and the stepmother, and then after that part is when everything goes in a different direction. Because we have the stepmother, gives this whole speech about why she kind of doesn't like Cinderella, why she treats her the way she does. Which, that development, we do get development of the stepmother, but it's not new development. It's in every adaptation, they kind of hint at the stepmother kind of resenting Cinderella and being jealous of her, and the whole struggle of being a woman back in a medieval time. And, it wasn't in how she had to marry to make sure her daughters had security and were taken care of. She had to marry some rich guy because her husband died. So we kind of get that same implication in this book. Like, with the whole added stuff about how she feels like resents Cinderella and feels like she was spoiled by her father. And she has said a couple things that have offended the stepmother. Like, she says, and she's a little girl. She's like 10 years old at the time. 10, 11, or 12. And she says, the stepmother has heard her say, "Oh, you brought me a new mom." And so the stepmother takes it very negatively. So it's not new, but it has a few nuances. But it's mostly, the stepmother development is mostly, like, other adaptations have done the same thing. But what else can you do with the character? There's not much you can do to expand on the character or make her any different. So she decides she's done with Cinderella and sells her into indentured servantry, and Cinderella's forced to escape. But although, let me rewind, so not before that, she tries to summon her fairy godmother, who was given a name, Lenore, and Lenore reveals to her that she can't do anything to help Cinderella, not anymore. I mean, her magic is very limited, there's only so much she can do. And what is really cool is they add the subplot of magic being forbidden in the kingdom. And so that's why Lenore's magic is very limited. So it allows for Cinderella to shine in this book, shine a lot more, and do her own thing. And she's forced to figure things out on her own, which I think is really nice, because I think Cinderella gets a bad rep as a character, as a Disney princess, because she's seen as very passive, and people that don't understand what it's like to be abused, I feel like don't understand why she doesn't fight for herself. Cinderella is not a fighter, she's not a warrior, she's not super clever. Although she's pretty smart in this book, I think. She's not a book reader, she's not a bookworm like Belle is. She's just a nice person who really cares about people and loves animals, which I think, I think she is a good character. I think she's just a character that's taken for granted, because she's not, like, tough and feisty like Mulan or, Merida, and she's not a bookworm like Belle, or, like, she's not, she doesn't have the cleverness or resourcefulness that, Jasmine does. And she's also not, like, super, like, overly talented like Rapunzel. So she's a very passive character, but in this one she really shines. She does things on her own. She has to figure everything out on her own, because her her fairy godmother, Lenore, can't really help her that much. I mean, she does offer a little assistance with with the dog, with Bruno, helping Cinderella a little bit. And I think, because all I remember is after she talked to Lenore, she was like, oh wait, there's one thing I can do. I can help Bruno. I can go to Bruno. So I don't know if she did something to like set Bruno free so he could help. You know, maybe she untied him or something. I don't know. But it's when she's actually with the slaver, that scene kind of reminded me. If you guys have seen the third Cinderella movie, the third movie to the animated one, we have when she in that third movie. So the plot of that movie is the stepmother comes across the wand, or well, Anastasia comes across the wand and gives it to her stepmother, and she makes sure and she arranges it so that Anastasia is the one that the prince thinks he's fallen in love with, and eventually later she has Anastasia disguise herself as Cinderella, and to get rid of Cinderella, who has thwarted her. I cannot say THs and Fs. Thwarted her in the stepmother zaps her into a pumpkin. An actual pumpkin, like not one that's turned into a carriage, but an actual physical pumpkin that's like, it's like a giant pumpkin. Like imagine you have a giant pumpkin, it's people took all the guts out and put you inside of it. That's what it is. And she's in the carriage trying to escape, and it's a really rough journey, and she's trying to get out. And you have Lucifer is turned into a human and the carriage driver, and she is forced to escape and ends up succeeding, and is forced and I think essentially kills Lucifer in his and I don't know that. I don't know if they would put that in Disney, even though Lucifer's a bad guy kitty. But she says the infamous bad kitty. But that's the scene in the beginning of this book when she's taken by the slaver kind of reminds me of that scene in A Twist in Time, the third Cinderella movie that was made. But there's a lot when I'm reading this, because I've seen a lot of the adaptations, and a lot of them, there's a lot of references to a lot of them in this book, or at least it feels like there are. I mean, I don't know. I would assume that the author has seen all the other adaptations of Cinderella, but now not necessarily the contemporary ones and in high school, but throughout a lot of there's a lot of things that remind me of all those other adaptations. But anyway, and I also, of course, think about how those adaptations also improved on a lot of things about this book that kind of make it a little less, like, as you get older, you realize they're questionable. And she finds herself on the streets, where she finds herself and Bruno on the streets, which I'm glad she got to keep the dog. I like Bruno. I'm glad she got to keep him. And she's found by this girl, Louisa, who's a seamstress, and coincidentally a seamstress at the palace. And so Cinderella not only kind of is hoping to meet the prince again and get him to recognize her, but also, she wants to start over and get a job and everything. So she goes with Louisa and gets a job at the palace, and then conveniently she gets a job. The Grand Duke assumes that she's the new maid for the Duchess, who is the aunt of Prince Charles. It's his name in the book, Prince Charles. So she gets a job working directly for her, and oh my god, she's my favorite character. I love her. She's so smart and spunky and spirited, and she seems a little hard-hearted at times, but she's just delightful because she has a good heart. She's a soft heart, but she also understands what being part of the royal family, being part of, royal politics, you have to be a little tough, especially as a woman. And she actually she's tough on Cinderella, but she also she helps her and cares and develops affection for Cinderella, or Cinder Girl as she calls her. And she's not stupid. She's aware of that Cinderella was sent to spy on her, because it turns out, in this book, the Grand Duke is the bad guy. We get to know the Grand Duke a lot more. He's a lot more closer to the live-action version of Cinderella. Physically, as far as his physical appearance, he's described like the animated character. tall and lanky with a little punch in the stomach area, and he has the hat with the feather on top, and but he is a lot more like, and he has the mustache and the monocle, but he acts a lot more like the live action guy, where he's trying to arrange her marriage, and he believes he knows what's best for the kingdom. And that's what makes him such a great villain, because he's very realistic, because I'm sure in medieval period there was a lot of people trying to get in the royal family and trying to have the king's ear and trying to manipulate and have these political machinations. So I feel like he's a very realistic villain to the setting. Now I don't know if some people would think he's kind of mustache twirly type of villain, but I didn't get that impression. But some people might, I don't know. I mean, he does have a mustache, literally. We also get more development on the prince as well. So she's in the palace, but of course this is also just like Conceal Don't Feel. This is a multi-perspective story, so we get her perspective, but we also see the prince and the Grand Duke. So we get to know the prince a lot more. So that did help make the whole insta-levy a little bit, improve the insta-leviness of the fairy tale. We get the prince and seeing how he really cares about the kingdom and wants to help and really cares about the people. Unlike the Grand Duke is like, no, we can't let commoners have a say in matters or have a commoner queen, because they'll ruin everything, and they'll be a threat and cause chaos, and he doesn't, and he's trying to do what's best. He has good intentions, because I think deep down he does care, but I think it's all about his own best interest, and his dad probably pressured him a lot as a kid, and and he's the one who him and his father were the ones that forbid magic, because they feared it was evil, and they saw it as evil, because of course, just like any other, there's good and evil amongst any other group. There's good people and bad people. In this case, good fairies and bad fairies. So I really liked that, and I how the Grand Duke had a bigger role in the story, and he was the new antagonist. And I like how we got a lot more political intrigue in this, and showing the prince getting more development and getting to know him better. Like I said, the only thing is I feel like we still didn't get enough of Cinderella and the prince as a couple or interacting. But like I said, the plot, because of the plot situation, it really didn't make sense. So I understand it. I'm just a little disappointed that we didn't get that, but I understand why. And I still find his obsessiveness over her a little bit weird. Yes, we got to know the prince better, and we understand he's big on believing in love at first sight, and he seems like a normal, nice guy. He's a normal, nice guy, but his obsessiveness over her is still weird to me. It's like, especially because they had this one night, and all I'm thinking is whenever people ask in adaptations or in this story, they're like, how can you know that after the one night together? I mean, that's like, a lot of times when I watch Cinderella adaptations, it's more for the other stuff that I like it, Now, the ones where it's not like Love at First Sight, like Ever After, that's a little bit better and more, I love the couple more in that one, their version of the Cinderella couple, more so than others, because, like, even in, the 1997 movie based on the, musical, the prince was still, like, a little, like, dude, chill out, calm down. I mean, I know you really are into her, but, like, and I know you want to find her, but like I said, you only spent a few hours together, so, I mean, that's great and all, and yeah, you get to know her a little bit, but still not enough, because what if, to quote Kristoff, what if she picks her nose and eats her boogers? Or what's her shoe size? Like, yeah, you have the glass slipper, but it doesn't have the shoe size on it, What if she talks in her sleep? What if she turns out to be a terrible queen after all? Which, she won't, of course, but the point is that, what if what if there's things, which, yeah, I mean, of course, in the end, you can safely assume that they probably lived happily ever after, and they loved each other always, and, you know, and they didn't annoy each other at all. But, so, we get the princess development, and we get the Grand Duke's development, and then we also, we get, like, court politics, and also, we get a lot of, like, we get to see the palace from a different perspective, which is nice. Like, in the original story, we got the palace from a distance, and then we get the ball, which they had 3 in this story. Well, 2, because they never went through with the third one. But they have 2, and one of them was the masquerade, which I love. I mean, we did not spend enough time at the masquerade, which is fine, but I love those kinds of scenes. Like, one of my favorite scenes in Phantom of the Opera is the masquerade ball, particularly in the musical, because I just love the idea. I mean, I've always wanted to go to one, and I sort of got to go to one in high school, but it was, first of all, my mask was one that you hold with your hand, so I didn't want to hold it the whole time, so I kept removing it, so there was, like, it kind of ruined the effect, and then it was a high school, so it was going to the cafeteria. There was no ballroom dancing, just people in masks. Probably most of them took off their mask anyway. And it was, you know, food, you know, the finger food and stuff like that. It wasn't fancy or glamorous or anything. It's a little disappointment. Anyway, so I love that we got a masquerade ball. And, as well as a regular, the one in the beginning. I also find it funny that throughout the novel, there are people like Louisa who talk about how love at first sight is crap. It doesn't happen. It's not real. But there are some people like the king and Prince Charles who do believe in it. Which is nice, you know? I mean, though I don't believe in it, it's sweet. And they're constantly talking about Cinderella being the mystery princess and no one knowing her name. And she's right there the whole time. It's funny that they keep talking about it while she's standing right there. And it's like, oh, just wait until you find out that she's the princess. That she's the mystery princess. And I feel bad for her because there are times when, like, people like Genevieve, the prince's aunt, who are like, I don't trust this girl. Why would she take off like that and abandon my nephew? And her beliefs are understandable, but I kind of feel bad because Cinderella didn't mean to hurt him, didn't mean to abandon him like that. She got scared and knew that the magic would wear off, and she had to be back in time so her stepfamily wouldn't catch her and everything. And he wouldn't see the real her. So it's kind of, and then in the second ball, she runs away because her stepfamily gets invited to the ball, and then she runs away, or in the third time, she doesn't actually run away. There's a third incident. It's out of her control what happens. But, which that might have said too much, but I'm terrible on not spoiling for people. We also, we got to see the palace from a different perspective. We got to see the servants' quarters and how the servants are, and of course, typical servants, they don't have a very high opinion of their employers, which is no surprise. We also see what Charles has to deal with, and not only do we see that he actually cares about his kingdom, but we see him struggling in his anxiety of taking over the kingdom. And we learn that the reason why his father threw this ball in the first place and wanted him to get married so eagerly was because he was dying. He's sick and dying, which is included in the live-action movie. Like, in the live-action, which I'm wondering which came out first, this one or that live-action movie. I'm gonna look at the copyright date of this book. Let me see the copyright. 2020. Okay. Oh, okay. So this is 2020. Which I wonder. Then it makes me wonder how many books come out. How many of these books come out? I mean, they're not. I wouldn't be surprised if several come out in a year. because they're fast reads. They don't take that long, and it's a YA middle grade. I think it's YA, consider YA. So it's a fast read. And probably wouldn't be take that long to to write and stuff. But not to belittle, but I mean, the story's not that hard to follow. It's not too many details of description, so it wouldn't be. And we already have the material, so it's not like you're just taking the material that's already existed and changing it up a bit. So it's probably, I wouldn't be surprised if several come out in a year, but this came out in 2020, so the live action movie came out first. So I'm wondering if that was an inspiration for what happened, the deal with the father, and why he wants his son to get married so soon. Because he's sick. He's getting really ill, and he knows he's going to be dying soon. So he wants his son to take over. And I like that we see Charles' anxiety, and he's worried about being a good king. And which I really like. Which I know people don't like or get tired of reluctant royal stories. Although I wouldn't call Charles a reluctant royal. I think he's just nervous about he's willing to take the role, and he wants to lead. He wants to be king, but not in an over-eager way. Not in a, like, ooh, I get to be king now and do what I want. It's more like, sorry, one of my pillows just fell off the chair. He wants to help, but he's also anxious because he doesn't know if he's ready to take charge, to take power, take power over the kingdom, to make rules and, help the people and guide them and whatnot. It's a lot of pressure. And we do kind of talk about the difference between commoners and royals, and how the royals are very fortunate and very privileged, and the commoners aren't. But the royals still have their struggles. Like, there's a lot of political drama going on in the background, people trying to take their thrones from them, and war, and then having to try to make the right decisions for everybody, and not always knowing what they are, and then the anxiety of all eyes. Everyone is looking to you. Everyone expects you to take care of things. Everyone expects you to lead. So yeah, they're very privileged, and they get a lot, but there's a certain pressure to being a royal, because you have the weight of your kingdom on your shoulders, and you have to make the right decisions, and then of course, and all eyes are on you. So whether you're a good or bad king or queen, you're gonna be remembered, unless you just don't do anything, as a royal, and he's worried about that. He knows that. Charles knows that. And, also, like I said, he's obsessed with finding Cinderella. He wants her more than anything to be his partner, and he can't. He's lucky, though, because Cinderella, of course, is a very kind and loving person, and hopefully her past won't, ruin her being a good royal. Of course, it probably won't, if this is the next, because they have the one series, someone wrote that series about, like, the princesses, if they were in real history, and how they would rule their kingdoms, like, the aftermath of their happily ever after. And they did this, I don't remember who was that wrote the Beauty and the Beast with Belle, and during the French Revolution. I don't know about Cinderella, but what historical event she's going to be part of. But which historical? I'll see. But she should be good for. I hope that they might do her story in a certain period in history. But and let's see, what else was it? So we also, that was really fun, getting to, spending more time in the palace and getting to know the kingdom and stuff. And like I said, Genevieve is my favorite character. She's awesome. And then, so we also, me see what else do I want to say. Okay, talked about. I don't know what else. I'm trying to think what else I want to talk about in the review. I did think about, like, when I was reading this, the only thing is I did think about, I wish I liked the idea of the prince not being such a good guy. That's why I liked Cinderella's Dead. Which kind of spoiler for that one. The prince isn't such a saintly man after all. That's all I'm gonna say about that one, if you haven't read that. And I kind of like that idea, so I would love to see, I wish we could have seen that one. And I almost was, until she, like, I love this book, but I almost wish Cinderella had got to see the world and go beyond her kingdom, and, granted, not the way that the stepmother was gonna send her away, but we got to see her explore the world a little bit more, and maybe find a new love. But of course, this is based on a Disney movie, so of course they weren't. I knew they weren't going to do that. I mean, I wish they would though, in that, or a story where the prince isn't such a good guy after all. But I knew they weren't going to do. I mean, it's also based on Disney, so it's going to be kid friendly, so they're not going to take it to that level. And like I said, like with the other one, it's a fast read, like with Conceal Don't Feel. And it's just really fun. It was fun I enjoyed the character development of some of the characters, that not just the two main leads, but also some of the secondary characters. I liked all the new characters. And like I said, I really, and I really appreciate that Cinderella got to shine a lot more, and we got to spend more time in the palace. And also I liked that we had the subplot of magic free and forbidden, because it allowed us to, for Cinderella to have another reason to be active in her own story. Like, she was fighting for magic and bringing magic back. I mean, it's still a small plot point, but I was glad it was in there. And it also kind of explains things like why the magic only lasts until midnight, which, yeah, I mean, magic has got to have restrictions, because it would be boring if, magic didn't have some kind of, limit. It adds some tension to the story when you know that there's a limit. And it doesn't, and it makes it less, like, I think using magic, like, even the Grand Duke does make a good point that magic is an excuse for people to depend on it and think it will always, rely on it to help them without them putting in the effort themselves to do things like that is a possibility. That can happen. But I don't think everybody's like that. But, I think he does make a good point in that sense. And this novel allowed Cinderella to not depend on Lenore all the time. But I'm glad we still got a little bit of that little plot, even though it was just a small point. Like, they didn't spend a lot of time with that, except for, you saw Cinderella was under pressure to stop the Duke and save magic, as well as save the king and his son from the Grand Duke's evil plots. And like I said, throughout the book, I was reminded of I kept thinking about the other adaptations and how they improve a lot. Like I said, a lot of the other adaptations, we spend more time getting to know seeing Cinderella and the Prince together. Like, even in the 1997 movie musical, we at least get the one scene, which we do get in this book. We do get a scene between them, interacting at the ball. And so in the musical, we get two scenes of them together, and ever after, the whole story is all about the Cinderella and the Prince, or Danielle and the Prince Henry, getting to know each other and spending a lot of time. I should say Henri, because it's French. It takes place in France. well, no, I guess they can't do that. They can't make it take place in France because the Belle story takes place in France during the French Revolution. So, this one, if they ever did do a historical, it would have to, I would think, England or maybe like Switzerland or something, or Sweden, one of those countries. Maybe where that one could take place, since the Grimm brothers were German, or it could take place in Germany. They could do it in Germany. But what was I gonna say? I always forget. I hate this. I'm so bad at reviews because like I always lose my train of thought. And which I wish that there was more. I would love to see these become TV movies because they can't. Obviously, they can't send to theaters because I don't think they could ever put these out, make these into movies for the theater. But maybe make these on the Disney Plus. Like, could they do that? Could they do like make these into movies? Although they would, I mean, I don't know though if, because some of these are pretty old, so they couldn't do some of the ones based on the older stories like Cinderella or Snow White or Peter Pan. But I would love to see these adapted for like the small screen at least. I think that'd be cool because I really liked the plot. Okay, I guess that's it. I don't know what else to say. But I don't know what the next one I'm thinking about either the Snow White one or the Peter Pan one next. There is a Sleeping Beauty one, and the Tingle one just came out, but I don't want to get to that one. And I'm kind of saving the Beauty and the Beast one because I don't want to jump on that one just yet. Because I'm always nervous about Beauty and the Beast reimaginings, since that is my favorite, and I think a lot of times when the book is your favorite, then you're a little anxious about it being remade or reimagined. Or granted, maybe I'm the only one who does that, but I'm weary about Beauty and the Beast stories that are their own version of the original animated movie. So I don't know which one, but I'm glad I read this one next because I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot better than Conceal Don't Feel. And another thing I could say that I really liked is that because the Conceal Don't Feel basically followed the same path, almost the same. I shouldn't say the exact same. I should say almost the same path as Frozen the movie, just going a little different directions, different twists and turns. But it kind of followed the skeleton, the ghost of the original movie plot. This one does not. I mean, it has the ball, and then we see the scene where the stepmother notices Cinderella is like daydreaming about her time at the ball. We get the Grand Duke showing up and her being in the attic. We get all that, but after that, it's a different story. It goes in a very different direction. While Frozen, yeah, it had differences obviously, but I feel like it still kind of met the same beats and had a lot of the same dialogue from the movie. Just different ways of different ways of the events from the movie happening. So it is different, but it isn't. But this is more different, and that's why I like this one better. And like I said, I don't know which one I'm going to read next, but it's going to be a while before I read the next one because, like I said, I feel like with this book, especially with the writing style and feeling as fun as they are, it does feel juvenile, and the plots are very the plots are far from predictable because, of course, it's a different take on the story. It's a twist, but they're still, I know a 32-year-old, unless for nostalgia reasons, I'm not the target audience. So, and I definitely like books more challenging, but occasionally I like something light and fluffy and fun, and this is my idea of light and fluffy fun, not, this is a romance technically. No, I'm not big in the whole rom-coms and stuff like that. I want some fantasy elements That's my idea. Like, these are my, like, I select books that are my light, fluffy reads, and these are some of them. So that is my thoughts on So This Is Love. It was a little bit all over the place, but probably Conceal Don't Feel is probably the same way. I don't really take notes when I'm reading these, so I'm not very organized when I do these reviews. I just, talk them out before I start filming. So, that is my thoughts on So This Is Love. If you haven't read that, I think it's worth a read, whether, especially if you're a Cinderella fan. And if you guys like this video, be sure to check it out. Click subscribe if you haven't already. Give it a thumbs up if you liked it. I hope you are enjoying your day, and I hope you are enjoying your reading and staying healthy and safe and not getting sick. And I will talk to y'all later. All right, bye.